The Denver Broncos offense and Bo Nix bounced back in Saturday's scrimmage against the defense. We'll tell you how they were in the red zone period and more on today's episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Broncos Country? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you know it's your team every day. Thank you so much to all the everydayers out there in Broncos Country. Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day, however you choose to do so. And if you're not yet an everydayer, it's easy to become one. All you have to do is hit that subscribe or that follow button wherever you get your podcast so you never miss out on what's going on with your favorite team, including breaking news episodes whenever there's a contract extension or recap from training camp. You get it all here every single day, all year long. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports, joined as always by Sayre Bedinger, site expert over there at predominantlyorange.com here. And Saturday, the Broncos held another training camp practice where Sean Payton turned it into a scrimmage format where there were various team periods with manufactured spots on the field and then a move the ball period, but intermissions in between that were special teams related. We'll tell you how Bo Nix and the Broncos offense bounced back against the defense after a lackluster performance on Friday. Plus, we'll go through some of the struggles of the second team offensive line and third team center. On top of that, with some young, impressive players at some of the skill player positions. You can get all that on today's show. Sayre, great practice out there in Dove Valley on Saturday as the Broncos held their scrimmage. And I think one of the biggest keys, as we were talking about in yesterday's show, after the defense really dominated Nix in the offense, we said one thing we want to see is can they respond and come out firing? Bo in the offense, they did a really good job kind of setting the tone early on. It wasn't perfect on the day, but it was a much more efficient operation. And you got to see them exchange barbs a little bit with the defense, which is what you want to see.
That's exactly what you want to see. Hey, if Mike Tyson is out there, well, I guess he's not out there for the defense right now, but I know Sean Payton obviously compared Dre Greenlaw to Mike Tyson, but hey, if you take a punch, you got to go deliver one back, right? You can't just fall down and expect that, oh, well, you know, we're just the victims here. No, you're going to go out there, you're going to fight back. And the Denver Broncos offense is showing early on that they can do that. I think it's fair to say at this point, like the defense is just that good, Cody, that they're often going to have the upper hand at practice. It's going to require the offense kind of gaining an edge where they can and winning situationally. And I love that during a scrimmage day at practice that was the time that the offense bounced back, right? Obviously, every practice has controlled elements, things like that. But when you're running a scrimmage style, that's where you really want those guys to step up and make plays, right? And so for the offense and Bo Nix in particular to step up in this type of practice scenario, I think that's absolutely huge.
Well, let's go into how Bo and the offense did it against the defense, which, look, fresh off the heels of a contract extension, Zach Allen was all over the place. I mean, this is a guy who would, you know, he had a few plays where in a real game situation, it's a sack. And he's going out there. It's like, hey, you just got paid mega money. He's going out there. He's playing in practice like it's a game, which is great. You want to see that. But that's going to make, and I think at the end of the day, this is the most important message about the defense versus the offense. This defense is going to make Bo Nix and the offense significantly better as the season goes about. I think it's going to prepare them to be able to have success this upcoming season because it is a tough, stingy unit at all three levels to go against. And, you know, we saw that there. So while the defense, I would say the defense maybe had the edge on the day, the offense had a very impressive day, and we're going to highlight that. So Bo Nix in the first team period that the Broncos had of the day, I thought he had a couple of really good throws. There were 3 on that series because you only get a handful of plays. I think they only had 5 plays offensively. On 3 of those plays, Bo found, downfield, he found Troy Franklin working on a 20-plus yard gain, coming back to the football with Pat Surtain in coverage there. He found Devon Valen on a beautiful sidearm throw where he was able to get across the field, pick up a first down on 3rd and 9. And then he recognized the blitz from Jahdae Barron blitzing from the nickel spot, and he was able to throw against the blitz, and he found Trent Sherfield wide open with the defender coming up and tagging him up there. Just enough for a first down. So very efficient, in rhythm moment here for the Broncos' first team offense against the defense.
That's really exciting to hear, especially because you're spreading the ball around. I mean, I heard Troy Franklin's name, Devon Vale's name, Trent Sherfield, Cortland Sutton. I mean, all these different guys getting involved in the offensive game plan. That's exciting. And Cody, I feel like we can, I mean, look at Bo Nix with J.K. Dobbins out there at his side. Do you feel like that's kind of unfolding as we expected when J.K. was signed? Is that he's going to be this team's maybe number one back heading into the season as well?
That's the vibe, at least right now. He seems to be the primary guy. And look, I think you're also seeing a lot of leadership from him. He's very outspoken. I think he's built some really quick relational equity with not only just the offensive guys, but the defensive guys. He'll chirp at the defensive guys, but he's also very supportive, very competitive. And you love to see that. Obviously, I think there's a trust factor with his experience as RJ Harvey continues to get looks. But really, those are the two primary backs there, RJ and JK in no particular order, though I'd say right now, if we had to favor it, probably JK. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets to start. But both these guys are going to see high volume reps, I think, this upcoming season, which is the difference between the Broncos running back room last year compared to now with some other guys being sprinkled in. But let's go to maybe some of the struggles of the Broncos offense as well. Even though they had success in that first team period, you go to the second team period, that's where they started to get a little sluggish here. You had, a couple of penalties here. I've got it here in my handy dandy notebook, Sayre, as we're going through and taking notes on every single play that's happening. We saw, the very first play, Bo found Cortland on a beautiful crosser for a big-time gain, about 14, 15 yards at that point. Dobbins had a 3-yard run. And then Riley Moss had a terrific pass breakup while working in coverage against Marvin Mims, fighting for the football, almost coming away with just knocking it down and kind of bouncing up. He was trying to pick it while on his back on the ground. It didn't happen. Fell incomplete. Riley Moss had a really good day defensively for Denver. And then on one other play, there was an inside run by J.K. Dobbins, but there was a penalty due to an illegal shift by the offense. So that backs you up right there. And then on the next play, Bo was looking to connect with Evan Ingram, who dropped the pass. So that obviously was a negative play there. And then on the final play, Bo was facing pressure from Nick Benito and Zach Allen. He had to roll out to his right. He tried to launch a throw to Troy Franklin there, and Pat Surtain picked him right on the edge of the sideline. So for Bo, he did throw an interception on the day and his second to Pat Surtain in the last 2 days here. But I thought overall just a bounce back day from the offense. Yes, there was that series right there where they were sloppy, but they cleaned up today, very efficient. And that's what matters. And when you get into the red zone, can you punch it in? Well, that's exactly what Bo Nix and the Broncos offense did when they got to that period.
Yeah, sounds like Nix kind of got back at Pat Surtain specifically, right? With a touchdown throw to Courtland Sutton. I saw your posts and a bunch of others on Twitter coming in after that throw was made like, oh, wow, that was a beautiful pass from Bo Nix to Courtland Sutton. Tell us about that and what that looked like down there in the red zone, because that's where these two guys are going to be making their hay this year.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Pat Surtain, you couldn't have played it any better, right? We talk about you're in the red zone because what set that play up is Bo, once again, was facing pressure from Nick Benito coming off one side. He scrambled out to his left, picked it up, got to about, I think, the 4-yard line, ran out of bounds. Good scramble play there by Nix to put the Broncos. I think it was a first and goal on the 4-yard line. And then he just threw a goal line fade to Courtland Sutton. But I mean, he put it in a perfect spot there where it was high over the top to the outside. Even though that Pat is in the hip pocket of Courtland, he's trying to play it. It's just to a point where only Courtland can use his arms to outstretch it before, getting 2 feet in and securing the touchdown. That was such a nice play. That was probably the most beautiful throw of the day. We'll talk about another one coming up here in a minute. And then he found Devon Vele for a touchdown across the middle in traffic. It was just that's where you saw the work there. And then they had to move the ball, period, on the final session here. I thought the Broncos offense and Bo did a really good job. But the final play, he had a beautiful throw across the middle in the end zone to Troy Franklin, who initially hit his hands. He kind of bobbled it and then it dropped, so he couldn't corral it in. And that would have been such a high note on a very good day by the offense. And so because of that, the defense was able to hold off and obviously bounce back. I would say it was kind of a tie on the day.
Yeah, and it sounds like also Audric Estime had a couple of touchdowns in that red zone period as well. So that's
Stacking
exciting
days
to hear. He keeps stacking them. That's what I'm saying. That's the exciting thing to me is that all these guys that we needed going into training camp to hear about X, Y, or Z stacking days. I mean, we're talking about Audric Estime, Troy Franklin, even I would say Devon Vele's name has popped up quite a bit here recently. And then, of course, defensively, there's other guys like Lavelle Bailey. You need him to step up. He's been stacking days. So really, really good stuff from this team, Cody. And I feel like the Broncos, they're just making each other so much better out there. I think it's going to be really fun to see how they look out there in joint practices with the 49ers. And then you get a series or two in preseason game number 1. That's going to be a lot of fun to see how this team does when they get to go up against somebody else.
Yeah, and look, it's going to set the table for this week as the Broncos will travel on Wednesday to San Francisco for a joint practice against the Niners on Thursday, and then they'll be off Friday, preseason game on Saturday of next week. And Locked On Broncos, we're going to have you covered all throughout next week and pretty much all year long. We appreciate you, Broncos Country here. But I kind of going through some other news and notes here at Saturday's training camp practice. We're going to highlight some of the younger guys on offense shining and some of the struggles from the second-team offensive line here on today's episode of the show. Today's Locked On Broncos podcast is brought to you by friends over there at 5 Hour Energy Transfusion, and it's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink minus the alcohol into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with your friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. And let's be honest, some days on the course or off it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized.
One of my top goals anytime I go out on the golf course is just to get under 100. And then you know what? After that, we decide, are we going to play the next 9? No, I'd love to. Absolutely. You have all these ridiculous shots that you hit throughout the course of a round of golf. And of course, you end up losing balls, and it takes away from that energy that you need to have a great round. So you want to get to 5hourenergy.com today. That is the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use our promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. This order is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders, and whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion flavored 5 Hour Energy shots today.
Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over there at the Game Time app, and we've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. And live music should be about making memories and not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. And that's where Game Time comes in, because Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever, because prices, they actually drop the closer it gets to showtime. And you can save up to 60%, yes, 60% off with their killer last-minute deals.
My absolute favorite feature for the Game Time app is the panoramic seat view, so there's no surprises when you show up to the venue. You pay all the money to buy the tickets to get the experience to go see the artist that you want to see. You don't want to be surprised when you get there that you got bad seats, so you can see your seats before you actually purchase your tickets and take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. The second team offensive line's been struggling with penalties out there, but a number of other young players for the Denver Broncos have been stepping up at practice as well. Might be Caleb Lohner season incoming here. We're going to tell you all about it on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. But once again, Broncos Country, thanks so much for rocking with us here through Denver Broncos training camp and all off season long, as we are finally about to get to some game action for the Denver Broncos and be reacting to all that. But you want to be subscribed so you don't miss a single episode of the show. Get us at the top of your podcast feed, get us in your YouTube algorithm, all those fun things as we approach this 2025 season for your Denver Broncos. Cody, let's start off by talking about the backup offensive line struggling. It's a bit frustrating because we talked this offseason about how that backup offensive line, it's got some serious potential, right? It's guys the Broncos have been developing. They've drafted a couple of guys, signed a couple of priority undrafted players, and you really wanted to see those guys progress, especially a guy like Matt Peart, who the team re-signed after last year. What are you seeing from this backup offensive line that's causing them to struggle? Because I've heard a lot of backup pass rushers having success, as well as a lot of penalties out there.
I mean, I think just, to my naked eye, it seems like a lot of the issues have to do with communication or miscommunication, whether it be during this, during the play as it's happening or pre-snap. You go back to Friday's practice, this second team offensive line unit in one period, they had 3 penalties in a row, got yanked out by Sean Payton because it was slowing everything down. And then once they get to the other team period on Friday, they had like 3 or 4 more penalties in the span of one period. So not sure what was going on with that. And of course, I think when you have different combinations, because you're working guys at different spots, you're getting Clay Webb into the mix at guard at times. Alex Forsythe is probably the primary center at that juncture. Alex Palczewski is getting reps at offensive tackle and also offensive guard. You mentioned Matt Parrott, Frank Crum. These guys are all working in with the second and third team offensive lines. So I just think it's about maybe guys trying to figure out where they're the most comfortable. But I also think that they're thinking too much, because if you're having all these pre-snap issues, pre-snap penalties, that's a thinking problem. That's something that can and should be corrected. And, I think Sean Payton thinks of it as a focus thing. Those have been the primary struggles. And I think those guys are just trying to find their footing. And also, but then again, could it also be that they're going against a defense that has really good depth with their young pass rushers as well? I mean, we know how good the Broncos first guys are. I mean, there's even times where we're seeing it against that second team O-line. There was one instance where they had Nick Bonito in and they had Dondre Tillman in on the other side at outside linebacker. So it's just getting work. But I think it's going to make those guys better. But you have to get rid of these pre-snap penalties. That's the biggest issue we've seen with that unit so far. And then we can't even go into detail about the third team offensive center here in terms of Joe Machowski, who's snapping to Sam Ehlinger. He had a rough day in Saturday's scrimmage here for the Broncos. He had several errant snaps that were high, low, to the side, one over Ehlinger's head, and that's just not what you want. So I wouldn't be shocked, Sayre, if the Broncos end up making a roster move here. Like I said, I don't want to make that basis off of one day, but Machowski, I would not be surprised if you see his name being waived or released at this point, and then the Broncos making another move elsewhere to add another body to their roster, whether it be O-line or skill player.
Yeah, because when you're going into the preseason and you're trying to get good looks at guys in training camp, I mean, pre-snap penalties and, user error at any position is going to cause you to, get the proverbial axe at this time of year. And it's just tough because you can't be sitting, okay, here we are. We're going to try to get a look at our young guys in the preseason, and it's 1st and 10 and it's a start of a drive. And all of a sudden you got a false start, and then you got a false start followed by a illegal shift or whatever it may be. And all of a sudden now your guys that are out there, you can't get a good look at these guys. And it's frustrating from the team standpoint because you want to control the controllables. And what you can control is doing things right. You can control being disciplined out there on the field. And we get mistakes happen and things like that. But you've got to clean up the pre-snap penalties before we get to the preseason, because that's the last thing these players need that are fighting for roster spots, that are fighting for space on the depth chart or playing time this coming season. To have pre-snap penalties just puts you in, especially offensively, right? Especially on offense, it's a problem because if you get into 1st and long situations, you can't run the ball as effectively. It's you get covered differently. It's just terrible. So they got to clean this stuff up before we get to the preseason.
Well, when you have those issues too, one guy making a mistake, anytime you have penalties right there, you're in the preseason and training camp, you are wasting on-field reps that 10 other guys are probably going to be mad because maybe they had a play design, just for them if they're a skill player or a running back. And, now it's a penalty. Now we get yanked off the field. Now, hey, you're taking snaps away from me. I mean, that's the frustrating element about it. But I agree with you. You got to shore that up. Let's highlight some of the young standouts here as well. I felt like Sam Ehlinger had himself an impressive day for the Broncos, despite some of the adversity with the snap situation going on there, finding Jerjuan Newton, what I would call the play of the day, who beat, I believe it was Chris Abrams-Drain, and I believe it was Delarian Turner-Yale on a post pattern deep downfield with the sun in his eyes, tracking it over the shoulder, hauling it in, getting down there. I mean, his speed, and I just say his overall versatility is something that has been on display. It was a big play there. He also had a nice play early on in that same drive against Damari Mathis. He's one of these guys that I've been impressed with. And Caleb Lohner getting run obviously with Bo, getting run with Jarrett Stidham, and even Sam Ehlinger at this point. He caught an RPO on a crossing pattern for about 8 or 9 yards after the catch. He's a big, big target, and we're also seeing him get involved as a blocker. I would say this about Caleb Lohner. Primarily, it's been Evan Ingram, Adam Troutman as those main tight ends. Caleb Lohner's been the next guy primarily standing out and getting looks. Lucas Kroll had himself a nice catch on the day from Ehlinger later on, but really it has been Lohner as the volume feature guy that I feel like we have all noticed a lot more.
He would be such a nice wrinkle to this team in 2025, right? I think when he was drafted with less than 60 snaps or whatever it was coming out of Utah, it was a nice thought to say, hey, he's going to be kind of redshirting this year, sort of getting more acclimated to football, going to get used to an NFL offense and learning the Sean Payton way and all those sorts of things. But man, if he can come in and play a role this season, I mean, why not have a package of plays for Caleb Lohner every single week? Why not have him ready to contribute on special teams where he can come out there and potentially block a kick or two for you? I mean, those sorts of things are, I guarantee you, the Broncos are thinking about, and getting him. I guess, what is Sean Payton's quote, Cody? It's like confidence is born from demonstrated ability or something like that.
Yes.
This guy needs to demonstrate the ability as much as possible because he has not played a ton of football. So getting him out there with the ones, rotating him in, I love that the Broncos are doing that.
I think we're going to see a lot of him in the preseason, which will be good. And to go back and circle back to Jerjuan Newton, even guys like Joaquin Davis. Andrew Mason and I were talking during practice, and we were both kind of in agreement. We were kind of talking about Jerjuan Newton might be a candidate to replace Michael Bandy on the practice squad just because, I mean, he's younger. I think he's got more developmental upside where down the road he could end up playing for you versus Michael Bandy. And nothing against Bandy. Bandy is a great practice squad guy. He helps out a lot, but the Broncos may look to get younger and also maybe get some more upside there on someone who actually will probably have a chance to play maybe in 2 to 3 years at this point. While also when you practice against him every day, he's got some intangibles to him that's going to help challenge the defense a little bit. So all these things we're going to continue to monitor here. But Broncos Country, that'll wrap up today's bonus episode of Locked On Broncos following Saturday's scrimmage practice on Monday. Sayre and I, it is game week. We're going to sit down and we're going to talk about players we want to see a little bit more out of here with joint practices with the 49ers coming up and the first preseason game approaching and players we're most excited about as well. You're going to get all that and much more on Monday's episode, Locked On Broncos. We'll see you then.